So I just ended up beating Cubic Odyssey and it took me around 37 hours. That's 37 hours of highly repetitive gameplay that doesn't really change much beyond the first 2 hours. I'm not saying this as a negative because I actually quite enjoyed this game. I'm just saying it as a little bit of a heads up to anyone who doesn't like repetitive games. So for starters, what is it? Well, it's Voxel No Man's Sky or No Man's Sky with Minecraft, however you want to frame it. The crafting aspect and gathering aspect of the game is fairly similar, but think of Minecraft cranked up to 11. You don't just have 3 pieces of armor, you got higher and higher tiers of armor and tools and weapons. It's fully fleshed out and doesn't feel like a simple Minecraft mod. It's definitely doing its own thing. There's a lot of little nice quality of life things with the furnaces or having your little robo buddy detect nearby ore or being able to pin a recipe, stuff like that. The problem is that the game kind of devolves the further you go because crafting recipes become wildly complex, requiring you to craft various resources from lower tier into higher tier. And eventually it just kind of abandons that altogether and instead forces you to grind new versions of the same ore. So what I mean by this is there is a base copper resource that you'll use near the beginning of the game, and then kind of at the mid to late point in the game, you'll come across glowing copper, which is literally just the same resource, but it's shinier. At the very least, you will feel the impact of the progression with the gear that you have. A higher level scanning tool will allow you to scan for higher tiered ores. A higher tiered weapon will deal more damage to enemies. Higher tiered armor will give you more shield and defense. But the only real permanent upgrade to your character's progression is when you save a Temple of Light, it will end up giving you more health points. This is important because all of the gear that you have technically can be deleted. Every time you end up dying in this game, you'll lose a certain amount of your currency, which can be used for trading at villagers and whatever, but you'll also lose durability to all of the gear that you have equipped. This can usually be repaired for cheaper resources than it costs to craft a new one, but if you keep letting the durability get lower and lower, the cost will increase, and eventually the gear will break and be removed from your inventory. I understand that the game needs to have some sort of punishment for death, but I think that this should be in the accessibility options as something that I can turn off. Why? Because when an item breaks, it just means that I'm going to have to then waste hours of my time gathering materials to craft it again. It also doesn't help that the combat is horrible. Enemy AI is non-existent. They will run in a straight line towards you, and if so much as your pinky toe steps around the corner, the enemy will shoot at your hitbox and kill you. The reaction times are insane. It doesn't feel like artificial intelligence, it feels like a robot. Worse still is the space combat, because it is boring as hell. You will get ambushed by the same pirate over and over and over again around your favorite planet, forcing you to just do this awkward dance around them so that they can't shoot you and you can shoot them. But if you stop shooting at them for even a split second, their shield will recharge almost instantly, requiring you to deplete their shield before you can damage their hull again. On the contrary, your shield takes a millennium to recharge. But okay, let's move on to something more positive. The exploration in this game is stupendous. These developers have clearly poured a lot of resources into the generation of these different planets. As far as my understanding, they random generated the planets, but then they ended up saving them to the game's files, so everything is basically static. By that I mean we're all starting on the exact same starting planet. It's not random generated. Story. Also, not really existent. You're basically going to be tasked with fighting off the darkness so that you can slowly end up getting your way back to your home planet. At which point you have to destroy the darkness on your home planet and save the princess. The thing is, by the time you get to this point, you've already done this whole song and dance with the planet of darkness 50 times. So within the first 2 hours or so, you're kind of still in the tutorial land. You'll get your ship, you'll end up saving your first planet of darkness. No joke, this is the entire game loop and it never evolves beyond this the further you go. You are going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again for every single darkness planet, and it becomes tedious rather than exciting. As for my recommendation for Cubic Odyssey, I think that I could recommend it. Frankly speaking, we don't have much in terms of Minecraft competition. I genuinely think it's odd that we don't have more voxel games that are of this quality and caliber. You can still totally tell that this is a really small team behind it because it tries to do a lot of things, and as such, it doesn't do a lot of those things particularly well, but it's still ambitious, man, and I can appreciate it for what it does right. Sure, the main quest was repetitive and boring as hell, but my incentive was to see what was around the next corner. I always felt like I was discovering something new for the first time. But my biggest issues with the game right now as a reviewer is the lack of tutorial. There are a lot of very small nuanced mechanics that this game just doesn't teach you. Also, for the love of God, please let me shift click items into a chest, and let me turn durability off on death, please. Until then, I'm going to keep saving and loading my file every time I get into a combat instance. I also want to point out for those interested in Cubic Odyssey for its multiplayer function, don't get it. The multiplayer is barely functional right now. They do have a roadmap which plans on fixing the multiplayer and ultimately adding mods to the game, which would be amazing.